1979 was an interesting year for Salvatore Testa. It will be the year he was allegedly had earned his button, and also he will see how the crime family will constantly evolve in one of the most bloodiest paths to be known for the 1970s. And as soon as the year was about to end, his friend Philip Crazy Phil Leonetti, his godfather Nicky Scarfo, and friend Lawrence Jogi Merlino were fighting for their lives once they whacked cement contractor Vincent Falcone. Scarfo, Leonetti, and Merlino would spend the Christmas holidays in the Atlantic City County Jail as detectives from Atlantic County Major Crime Squad packed up Joe Serlano and his family and moved them out of town and into the Witness Protection Program. Their bails were $150,000 at that time in 1979, and they had lawyers working together on their cases. By New Year's Eve, all three defendants were out of jail and back on Georgia Avenue, awaiting a trial that was several months away. As the clock struck into midnight, the ball dropped in Times Square and the 1970s were over. It was 1980. In the year 1980, it will start the bloodiest decade for the Philadelphia crime family to be reported. This will be quoted from Philip Leonetti's Mafia Prince book. The Eyes of March 1980, Part 1. As Nicky Scarfo, Philip Leonetti, and Lawrence Merlino settled into the life outside of Atlantic City County Jail, they were not entirely free. Their bail restricted them from their outside of Atlantic City County. That meant they were not able to meet with the guys like Antonio Capernegro and Bobby Manna to know what was going on in North Jersey or New York. Before they whacked Vincent Falcone, they had dinner with Bobby Manna in New Jersey, and that got Nicky Scarfo's antennas up that something was going on, that maybe they was going to make a move against Angelo Bruno. Also, they were going back and forth with Angelo Bruno over the union dispute. With their bail, they couldn't go to the Philadelphia either. Salvatore Chucky Merlino and Salvatore Testa were coming down from Philly a few times a week to see them and let them know what was going on, but they didn't know anything about Capernegro or Bobby Manna. All they knew that there was stuff in South Philly. So at the time, they were basically stuck in Atlantic City and out of the loop of what was going on. Philip Leonetti's uncle, Nicky Scarfo, were going to let things play out with Lefty, meaning Ange, and we're going to lay low for a while and get ready for this trial. If we don't win this trial, nothing else matters because we're dead. Quoted from Nicky Scarfo. At the time, Philip Leonetti was busy with Scarf Inc. Lawrence was busy with Nat Nat, his rod company. Nicky Scarfo was meeting a lot with Harold, going over the discovery in the Vincent Falcone case with the lawyers. Meanwhile, up to New Jersey, Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro, the consigliere of the Bruno crime family, was doing everything but lying low. He was planning to assassinate his boss, longtime Philadelphia mob don Angelo Bruno, and take over the family. The Chicago-born Capernegro earned his nickname Tony Bananas from his early days in the underworld when he ran a profitable sports book and juice loan operation out of a produce market in the Down Neck section of Newark. As 1979 turned to 1980, he was the head of a growing intra-family movement that opposed the old-school Bruno's strict opposition to allowing mobsters to engage in the extremely lucrative distribution of narcotics and continued resistance to exploit the family's Atlantic City operations beyond the traditional street rackets, which at the time consisted primarily of gambling, loan sharking, and extortion, under the careful watch of Nicodemo, Little Nicky Scarfo, who ran Atlantic City much like Capernegro ran North New Jersey. In the months prior to his death, Angelo Bruno had all but lost control of the crime family he had led for the previous 2 decades. Bruno and his longtime underboss, Philip Chicken Man Testa, who was Salvatore Testa's father, were feuding over money and power and not speaking with one another. Bruno was involved in a dispute over control of the Atlantic City casino unions with Nicky Scarfo, whom he had unsuccessfully tried to turn against Testa a few months prior. Unbeknownst to the boss, the biggest threat from Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro, his trusted consigliere, who seemed to revel in the backstabbing politics and ruthless violence of the mob that Bruno had shunned for 2 decades. The ambitious and treacherous Capernegro had started flirting with the idea of whacking Bruno sometime around the summer of 1979. After a series of clandestine mob sit-downs with Frank Funzi Thierry, the powerful Genovese gangster who Caponigo thought who had given him the green lit to whack Angelo Bruno by telling him, "Our friends the commission said, do what you gotta do." For more than 2 decades, beginning in 1959, Bruno ran the Philly mob like a business, not like a gangster. He was considered a racketeer and was dubbed the Dust or Don by the local media. While the manner in which he ruled the underworld may have been docile, the manner in which he was about to die was not. The soft-spoken Angelo Bruno was known as Ange to those who knew him well, and Mr. Bruno to those who didn't. At around 10:30 p.m. on March 21st, 1980, Bruno was sitting in front of his passenger seat of a Chevy Caprice, being driven by a young Sicilian-born mob associate named John Stanford. Bruno's normal driver, his trusted aide, Raymond Long John Mortorano, had conspicuously made himself unavailable a short time earlier, and when it was time to drive the Don home from a dinner meeting with the subordinates, a popular South Philadelphia restaurant named Cuz's Little Italy, which was owned by one of Angelo Bruno's capos, a Siggy named Frank Sindone, and had previously been the site of Piccolo's 500 Club, which had been owned by Nicky Scarfo's uncles, the Piccolo brothers. Over the last month, Sindone, who was known as the Barracuda, had become close with Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro. Sindone, who ran a very large gambling and loan sharking operations in South Philadelphia, seemed to share Capernego's beliefs that Bruno was no longer the best fit to run the family. Bruno was not aware of any of this, as he accepted a kiss on the cheek from Sindone as he was leaving Cuz's Little Italy that night. Some underworld observers believed that Sindone purposely marked Bruno with the kiss of death. As Stanford-driven Caprice approached Bruno's home, which sat at the corner of 9th and Snyder in the heart of South Philly, Bruno had no idea he was living the final seconds of his life. Waiting in the shadows was a sawed-off shotgun under his trench coat was Bruno's executioner, Antonio Tony Bananas Capernegro, the power-hungry and treacherous North Jersey mob leader who was Bruno's consigliere, and he set in motion of the Palace coup to remove Bruno from power. It was all about greed and treason, which was Sicilian's calling card, according to Nicky Scarfo. As Stanford pulled the car to the curb, he lowered the front passenger windows so that Bruno could flick his cigarette into the gutter. As he did, Capernegro emerged from the shadows, removed the sawed-off shotgun from his trench coat, aimed it square at the back of Bruno's head, and fired from close range. The blast instantly killed the 69-year-old mob don. Things would never be the same in Philadelphia mob. On the night that Ange got killed, pandemonium happens. Angelo Bruno is killed right in front of his house, and then the news media and neighbors in the Philadelphia area began to panic and cause a media sensation. Gory images of the gentle Don have become circulated across the media, been reported by news media television stations, radio stations, and more. And of course, this even shocks members of the Philadelphia crime family, including Salvatore Testa, his father. Even though he was at odds with Angelo Bruno, he never was a part of this hit squad. So therefore, the Testas, Merlinos, and others became very paranoid about what will become the power dynamic. So when Philip Leonetti and the Blade had heard this at Caesars, therefore, Philip Leonetti decided to tell his uncle. When Philip Leonetti saw Nicky Scarfo, when he said this in Philadelphia Mafia Prince, when we got outside, he said, "What's the big news?" Nicky Scarfo says, "What's going on?" So I tell him, Ange is dead. He got shot outside his home. My uncle made a face like he was both happy and surprised, and we went to Scarf Inc. office and watched what was going on. It was live on TV. All the Philly stations were carrying it. A little while later, Lawrence comes to the office and he says he spoke to Chucky, who was in South Philadelphia, and that everyone down there is going nuts trying to figure out what happened. Chucky also sent word that Philip Testa was sending Salvie down first thing in the morning with a message for my uncle. Now at the time, we couldn't leave Atlantic County because of our bail, and Philip Testa couldn't come to New Jersey because the SCI had sent my uncle to Yardville, wanted to give him a subpoena to testify. If he'd gotten served, he wouldn't have testified, and he would have wound up sitting in jail like my uncle and Ange when they went to Yardville. So everything was being done through messengers. That the morning after the most sensational gangland killing in the history of the Philadelphia La Cosa Nostra, the heinous picture of a slain Godfather's corpse, his mouth agape and missing most of his cranium, was splashed across the newspaper front pages throughout the world and has since become an iconic image of crime in the 20th century, used in hundreds of print and television gangland retrospectives over the last 3 decades. First thing in the morning, like clockwork, here comes Salvie. It's like 7:30 in the morning and he's by himself. Philip, Salvatore Testa, and Nicky Scarfo take a walk on Georgia Avenue towards Atlantic. There was a little coffee shop that they used to go to called the Cup and Saucer. While we're walking, Salvie says to Nicky Scarfo, "My dad needs you to go to New York and find out what's going on. Nobody knows nothing. No one knows who did it, and no one knows who's in charge. It's chaos out there," Salvatore Testa said. Meanwhile, Nicky Scarfo is trying to get his thoughts together. He notifies Salvatore Testa to tell his father that he will be in charge and that they need to come up with a plan to make sure they figure out who was behind this hit against Angelo Bruno. Meanwhile, Salvatore Testa will pass on the message, and then he will see before his own very eyes that his father, Philip Chicken Man Testa, will be the new godfather of the Philadelphia crime family.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and check out more of our content. Feel free to give your feedback and suggestions on what we should do next in the comments. This is Infinite Lee Productions. We love ya.